Okay, today we're working on a MacBook Pro 15-inch. The model is A1707 and it has a cracked screen, okay? So it's still on, but no image, and you can see the backlight is on. Yeah, that's the one with a touch bar. So let's just take it apart and replace the panel. So we remove the bottom screws first. And I'm using my pillbox for the screw collection. I memorize what screw goes where, at least for now. When we get to the inside, you definitely want to be very careful and attentive as far as the screws. So okay, so it needs to be lifted up a little bit, and then we need to slide it this way. So I'm trying to separate. There's a couple of kind of like spring hooks on each side that are holding it initially. And we need to unsnap them first, you see? So that one is unsnapped. Let's do the other side. Okay, that one is done. And now let's just, okay. Basically you want to slide the bottom cover this way. It's not like old MacBooks Pro, the unibody models, or Retinas, where you just, lift it up directly. Here you need to slide it a little bit, and I'll show you. Here are the hooks, or little locking bars that go under this portion, under this metal lip right here and right here. You see, on each side. So make sure you don't try to just rip it up, because it's not gonna happen. Or you will bend all of these out of shape. You don't want that. So now we do want to unplug the battery first before we proceed, and for that you need to remove this protective sticker. I'll put it somewhere so that I don't lose it. And you also want to unplug this connector carefully. Let me zoom in. This one. Unplug and remove it. You see, pull it outside of the connection. Okay, like that. And here's the battery screw, pretty much. So let's just unscrew that one. Okay, so that's the big screw. Okay, and here's the battery little contact plate that we want to sort of disconnect. You don't really need to do much more. And since we're not removing the logic board, our attention moves over to this area, and this area. So I'll start with easy things, and I will remove the little plastic covers, hinge covers. Yeah, I think that's a T. It should be a A1707 T3. And that's a T3. That is exposed. No, you see no cables running through the hinges, as well as here. Everything is right here right now. So let's start slowly disconnecting or unscrewing all these. Pretty much all the screws that you see will have to be unscrewed. But let's start doing it one at a time. So we'll remove this plate. And yeah, I'm as you see, I'm keeping all of these things separate. One bin per, I guess, per component. Okay, so those are out. Now this is actually the main connector for the LCD assembly. So we can undo that. And I'll also undo this. As well as these couple of screws. So now I can that connector. So that's disconnected. You also want to remove these. They're all the same length. And this is going to be like a little flex holder of the screen, like a little spring. You'll see it once we disassemble the thing. Okay, so let's do those. That would be, I think, a T5. They're also the same size, the same length. So this is our, I guess, PCB for the screen. That's where all the electronic portion of the screen is. And this is the springs that I was telling you. They need to be loosened up, unscrewed. Also, what needs to be unscrewed is this antenna assembly. This screw and all of these three antennas need to be unplugged. And it's going to be fed out from under the heatsink. Okay, so we put that screw separately. I'm using a flat spudger tool, plastic one. Be very careful with these. Don't force it too much. Okay, so that's removed. Now, and that's a little crazy, but all these screws, all these tiny ones on each side, need to be unscrewed, and that's going to actually be the Bluetooth Wi-Fi antenna. This whole assembly, this whole assembly needs to come out, and we need to remove it before removing the screen. So those are really tiny. Those are, I think, the star screws that are similar to what you have in an iPhone. You know, all iPhone series, the bottom screws, the same driver. So yeah, I'm even using the same screwdriver that we use for iPhone. So be careful with these screws, because they seem to be pretty easy to strip. So if you're doing it for the first time, I would probably recommend just grabbing a fresh driver, just to make sure it has the nice, you know, tip that's not worn and rounded. And when you work on them, don't do this kind of weak grip. You know, you kind of want to apply, let me turn it around a little bit. You want to apply a little bit of like pressure, if you will, and be very steady. Try, you know, when you do it like that, it's very easy to strip it. But when you apply more force to it, so that it doesn't slip, for sure you get the best grip on that screw, and you remove it without damaging the you know, the screw, so that it can be reused. Even though it looks like I'm not I'm doing it easy, I'm actually, when I'm start, you know, kind of twisting the driver, I'm applying a little bit of a down force to make sure I'm not stripping the head of the screw. So there's a lot of screws here, and all of them need to come out. Okay, now everything is out. Let's see. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. It seems to be loose, but there probably is a little bit of adhesive. So now look at this area. I am pulling this whole assembly from under the heatsink slowly, not to rip any connectors. Remove it, and then in the same manner you would want to like feed it through that tunnel, if you will, back when you assemble the thing. So this is your antenna assembly. Put it aside for now. So here's our screen, pretty much ready to go. All of these things are loose. This is the board. This is a little like support mechanism, and our hinges. So these 6 screws are the only screws left before we can remove the screen from the assembly. I'm sorry, from the bottom. And here I would recommend doing I guess 2 screws fully. Any screws, I don't have any preferences. And then actually you need to open the computer, open the screen and remove the remaining ones. Yeah, like that, because if you unscrew it all in the like closed down position, then you won't be able to remove the actual screen from the bottom portion of the computer. So 1, 2. I'm supporting the computer and the screen with my left hand at the moment. It's kind of hanging, so there you go. The screen is disconnected from the top. I'm sorry, the screen is disconnected from the bottom, and we don't need the bottom anymore. We are working on this portion alone. Okay, so at this point we will need a heat gun. So we need to remove this bottom glass bar first, in order to access some screws that are in there, and then we can proceed with the rest. Okay, and I will warm it up a little bit with my heat gun, just to soften up that adhesive that holds it down. And we put eye protection. So I'm working with glass now. So I'm slowly working my way towards the left, and warm it up as it cools, as you feel that it's getting colder. Okay, here's our MacBook Pro plate. Feels like plastic, but it's actually made of glass, so don't try to bend it too much. Okay, put it aside where it's safe. Okay, and now as you see, there is a bunch of screws in there. Okay, so now we need to unscrew pretty much all of them. Those are T3 screws, and we can also stick this little bottom portion of the rubber seal that goes around the screen. Just I usually undo it up until this point to expose the screw. Same on the other side. Okay, So we can start. Technically, there's like two groups of screws that you want to separate. One that holds that like little insert. I don't know how to call it. There's a little bar, like special black bar that holds some of the ribbons in check, I guess, in place. So when you remove that, you need to remove this. So I'll probably start with that, and that would be the screws that you see that are not attached to them, that are not going over this metal bar. So that screw, this one, and that one would be actually the one that are holding the screen with that metal bar that goes all across it. So I'm gonna keep those intact and unscrew the ones that are not holding that bar. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 of these. Okay, let me double check what these are. Yeah, those are not part of it, as well as that one, you see, and that one. So let's try to pull that bar out, and that's actually going to be that weird springy assembly that I was telling you about. So that's what we are removing right now. Okay, let's do the other side. So what I'm doing is I'm just pulling that thing up. Yeah, maybe I need to unscrew this couple of screws because they're on the way for that metal bar. So I'm doing this. Actually, let me feed it back here and unscrew this one. Okay, so let's try now. I think it's gonna go fine. Yep. So those screws were on the way. So we removed this piece. Let me show the whole thing. You see, it's a little like a few metal bars, and they're rubberized, and there's rubber in between them, no metal thing. So they're not. This is not an electronic component. It's more like just some mechanical structure. So if you have a little cut in here, I don't think that's gonna affect the functionality, but still try to keep it intact. Okay, so that's the piece, and it goes to the side as well. So now we're getting closer to the end, I guess, of the screw section. And now let's unscrew all the ones that are holding the screen. They also T3. They're all the same size, the same length. Okay, those last couple of screws that you see there, let me show you. You see 1, 2, that one is kind of hidden under the flex. Those are for the backlight only, so that actually can stay. Those two screws can stay. You just unplug the backlight from here, right? 1, 2. Okay, so now we are getting to the, so as the backlight is disconnected, and now we're getting to the, I guess, to the exciting part, the actual removal of the screen, the panel from the housing. And I would first carefully remove this rubber bezel, or like framing, however you call it, seal. Don't pull it too hard so that you don't stretch it. Just be gentle, okay? Because we are going to be reusing it, and it needs to be somewhat the same length as it is right now. So remove that. Oh, put it aside. You don't need it. Okay, now as usual, if you follow our YouTube channel, as we've done multiple videos on these already, we don't use heat on, let's say, Retinas or MacBook Air. We just use pretty much a card, run it a few times on each side, in the case of Retina, or one time on MacBook Air, because there's only one strip of adhesive versus 2 on the Air, versus 2 on the Retina. These adhesives that they use are a bit different than those. They're not that easy to just cut. They're not foamy, like, or at least not the same type. So here I would probably want to warm it up just a slight bit so that the adhesive softens just a tiny bit, but not hot enough to melt. Not to melt. Hot enough to warp the films. Those films that stack up under the panel. So, and that is important because replacing those is a tough gig. So we want to be as careful as possible, and just warm it up just a tiny bit so that adhesive gives a little easier. So, and a regular rule, or a rule of thumb, whatever you say it, however you say it, is you want to start working on the opposite direction from the crack, because when you work around the crack, things just break, and it turns into a mess. So I'm right-handed, so I usually start from this side anyways. So it's kind of I guess the right crack, if you will. I don't have to start from here if I were left-handed. So because if we start from here, I'm hoping that this kind of adhesive will separate completely, and then this side will separate completely without cracking, and then here I'll go without having to deal with a lot of cracks as well. On this side, if it's the last side, it's easy. You kind of can lift the screen up and just work like that. But always try to start with the side that's not cracked. So I'm lifting this part a little bit just to get myself a little bit of a jump start here so that I can pry the card underneath. And if you see here's the actual depth of the screen, I guess. So you don't want to go with the card deeper than that. You just want to stay within that, whatever, half an inch or a little over half an inch. spacing, okay, around the perimeter. So I'll leave the, maybe like a pick here just to keep it up. And it's fairly like the few ones that we did before were a little more tough. This one feels a little easier, which is actually a nice surprise. So I'm just rerunning it. So I'm basically, at first I'm going like half of the, there's like one strip of adhesive. So I'm going and kind of cutting half of it, and then I'm going a few more times to just get the rest of it. And you see, I'm going not deeper than this, which is, if you look close enough, this is your edge. You see right here? Yeah, that's where the films begin. Here you're safe, like in this area, you're safe. So if you put the card too far, you can damage. It's not necessarily that you will, but you potentially can. Okay, so this side is pretty much done. It's lifted all the way up. Let's move over to the longer side. And I will move my pick in here, just, or maybe even further towards the corner, so that the screen is kind of sitting up. And now I will reheat the longer side just a tiny bit. Starting from the bottom again and working. Reheat it a little more. Okay. So we're done pretty much up to the camera. Oh, almost, yeah. Yeah, up to the camera. So let's apply heat. You see, that's where the crack was, so it started cracking, and that complicates the separation process. Okay, so here's our part. It still has this metal bar that we need to remove and transfer over to the new screen because they don't come with it. But I'll show that to you later. For now, let's concentrate on cleaning. I'm trying to get not only the black stuff, but also the remaining like stuff from the adhesive, so that we get the surface as clean as possible. Okay, now we need to fix, you see right here, there's a little bit of dent. Okay, so let me just put something here. I'm gonna try to basically push on that area. But if we don't straighten it up, it might cause the new screen to crack. So, and there's a sticker on the back of it, so I don't really care. I'll probably just lift it a little bit. See, it's not that bad. It's just slightly bent, but those bends are the, you know, the ones that cause all kinds of crazy problems. So let me put a little higher and try to push again. think that we got it fairly straight, and I was just making sure there are any bumps or any tiny shards of glass, because that can cause the new screen to actually crack, and I actually just found one. The surface has to be perfectly flat, clean. Good thing to remember here is you want to make sure the adhesive doesn't go over this black edge here, because that's where the rubber frame is going to be tucked in. So you only want to go up until that point, and so keep that in mind when you apply your adhesive. This is pretty much ready to go for a new screen. Let's put it aside for now. We don't need it at the moment. We need to transfer the metal bar from the old screen to the new screen, but before we permanently stick it to it, I would strongly suggest you test the new screen. So yeah, this thing is the board itself is wrapped around the bar, so we need to separate it. But before I do that, I would do one little trick that will save you some guesswork in the future. And that would be, I would grab a marker, preferably with the fine, pin, fine, point, and I would just mark the location of this bar. Oh. Yeah, I would just mark the location of this bar like that. So that when you are ready to attach the bar from the new screen, you don't have to guess how far up or down it needs to be attached. Okay, so we can, and there's nothing but the metal bar that you need from the screen. So these things can be broken, ripped. This is basically old PCB. The only other couple of pieces that I would remove from here would be these plastic little attachments that are kind of smoothing out the edges for the ribbons, but we'll get to that a little later. So basically, I don't care if I crack. Yeah, you see I'm just cutting through the thing. Maybe I should even warm it up a little bit just to kind of remove it in one easy motion. Let's do this. Okay, so you see we have this line that we drew. That's going to be our guideline for the new bar, so that we don't accidentally stick it here or maybe all the way down here. It has to be kind of precise for it not to have any issues. So now we can and over here, just so that you don't worry for the future. You have these little circles like targets on each side of the actual side of the screen that are kind of like guidelines, guides for you to attach this bar. You see on that side and that side. This way you don't have to guess here. You just stick it so that both of these are matching, and you're good to go. Okay, so I'm not marking anything in this at this point. I'm just removing it the best way I can. So now clean all of the adhesive and some broken glass off of this thing. The sharper the blade, the easier it gets. So you see I got it all off in one run. Okay, we can also clean up the bottom part a little bit. I mean the bottom side. Now we can apply fresh adhesive to the side where the glass is going to be attached to. And I'm trying to imitate. You see, I haven't removed this film. It's like white thing. I don't think it needs to be removed. So, and I'm trying to recreate the adhesive. You know, kind of follow the thickness as much as I can. Okay, so that side is done. And we can actually pull the new part. Okay, so here's our new part. And remember, I will have to transfer a couple of more pieces from the old part to the new one. Yeah, I cut it off. Basically, there's a couple of these plastic bumpers. Okay, so let me put this up like that. It is tricky because all these things need to be bent a certain way, and you can't really do it unless you fully install it, right? But it's still, you better do it, because I'm sure that if you're doing this repair, you've seen that these screens are very expensive. Just attaching it and then only then to discover that there's like a line or a dead pixel, or it just plain doesn't work, it's kind of gonna be very, you know, difficult to then remove it from the frame without breaking it, and you know, in order to return it under warranty. So that's why I'm always doing this kind of dry test before I apply it, before I attach it permanently to the framing. And I know it's gonna be a little tricky because of these all these whatever ribbons and stuff. I'll apply just a bit of tape all around it, just so that it stays in place and not flies away on me. You need to screw down the battery. Actually, I don't need to put the antenna. Remember there was this assembly with the antenna, so I'm not putting that one on. It doesn't need to be present for a power on test. I'm putting something to support it first. A power cord, and let's try powered on. I just saw a battery sign. Okay, so it actually turns on, and yeah, I'm not sure if I can turn it all the way to face the camera. I'm just gonna give it a quick test. You probably see an apple. And it looks perfect. Okay, so we can remove the tape now and proceed with our installation or assembly. So I am going to apply the bar first. So I'm peeling off the paper from the adhesive. And now remember, the most important thing is I want to match that and that hole with the little target things images on the side. It's on perfect. Okay, so now we need to apply the bar back onto the metal. Okay, so I followed the line so that this way I didn't have to do anything. If you don't have a pen, you can probably scratch it with, like, I don't know, something sharp, a blade maybe, like that. Just kind of go and scrape something so that when you install it, you don't have to guess, because when you put it into the screen, all of those spacings, all those positions are kind of very crucial. So now the last piece that we need to transfer from this old part is these two bumpers, as I call them. I don't even know if that's the way they called. Just like that. Make sure there are no particles, no dust. Okay, now we also need to install the bezel. Here's our piece. I'm removing the film that's on the opposite side, like on the inside. Peel this off. And there's also a film on the camera, you see? Want to double check to make sure you don't forget it. So when I'm starting with the top, Or should I start on the bottom? It's a good question. Okay, it's important that these little things go on top. You see? So that when I'm looking at the face of the screen, they're actually sitting above them. You see? Also, you need to remove these. It seemed that it landed okay. So now it's just time to assemble it and be done with it. So let's connect the backlight. So these are the backlight connectors. Now that has to be tucked in a little bit. So then let's put the screws in, and that was the I think 6 screws total on that bar. So now there would be 5 screws that are to be put into the metal bar. Now we can put these bottom pieces in. So now we need to put the MacBook bar, and that's it. Let's first prepare it. Okay, it's clean. So let's peel this protective thing off. Let's screw the screen back. I'm not tightening the screws super tight just because I want to align the screen with the bottom chassis, but you can only do it once it's closed. So I'm closing it down, and now I'm just running a finger on all the edges and make sure that there's no misalignment. And actually it fit pretty well. It's pretty smooth everywhere, so I'm gonna tighten it up the way it is. So I'm screwing the little springs first. Okay, so let's feed the antenna cables in. I'll just connect the antenna cables. Finished. And I'm just gonna go through the regular testing of all the components, make sure that, the camera is connected. And but as you see, we have image. It's in the startup mode. That's how it's done. It's a pretty complicated repair, to be honest, and a pretty time-consuming as well. So I don't know, if you're a beginner, maybe it would make sense to just buy the whole assembly. Yeah, you pay a little bit more upfront, but the result of the job is, is a little more clear. It's basically guaranteed. When you do a panel only, yes, you save a few dollars on the part, because obviously it's cheaper than buying the whole assembly. But you see, it takes up a lot of time, some tools, some knowledge. Kind of weigh your options, make sure that you're making the smart decision. This is one of the options that you can do, but always think whether it's worth it or not. It's more of a demonstrational video rather than something that we do on a regular basis. We do full assemblies in most cases because it's predictable, repeatable result, consistent. You don't get any problems due to dented frame. If the screen was dropped and you have a dent right here, then after you fixed it, there's no guarantee that when somebody presses here, or even yourself, like while you're installing and squeezing the adhesive, if you press on it, just because the area was not perfectly flat and like even, you can just flat out crack the new screen like right away. And that's something that will definitely be eliminated if you replace the whole piece with a brand new one, or refurbished, whatever, something that comes with from a vendor or supplier with guarantee. And this way you just kind of don't waste your time. You spend some time, but at the end you're gonna get almost 100% positive, successful job, where you and the customer will be both satisfied with the outcome. That's always healthier for the business versus, you know, some delays and some warranty issues where people have to come back with a line coming in because there's like a shard of glass that, you know, was forgotten, like left under the screen, and they were, you know, closing and or adjusting the screen angle like by pressing over here, and you know, they cracked the screen. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like it, share it with your techie friends, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. See you on the next one. Bye.